Welcome, welcome, welcome to Facing the Nation for December 20th, 2024. As always, it's a privilege to be here with you. And when we are here, we have so many things to talk about, but I need you to go right now. Tell a neighbor, tell a friend, call up somebody, tell them Facing the Nation is on, and this is going to be a program that you definitely do not want to miss today. So you call up that friend, call up that neighbor, tell them tune into the People's National Congress Reform page on Facebook, the APNUFC page on Facebook, APNU page on YouTube, and let's get today's program rocking. Today, I have two persons joining, one of which is no stranger to the platform, no stranger to Facing the Nation, and another who is a first time guest on our show. And, because we always run out of time so quickly, I do not want to delay today's discussion. So let me introduce my guest for today. I will start with the more known and usual face, the one everybody knows. Today, my guest will be the chairman of the People's National Congress Reform, and he is also the shadow minister of Natural Resources, Mr. Shurwayne Holder, Member of Parliament. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Shaneika. Good day to you and your viewing audience.
All right. Thank you for joining today. I know today's discussion is going to be a timely and a hot one, but let me introduce my next guest as well for today so that we can begin our discussion for this program. He is someone who is some persons are now getting to know because he's had a lot to say over the last, I'll say couple of days, couple of weeks. But, he is a prominent business person in our country. He has been doing lots of things, not just in Guyana, but overseas as well. He is also a member of the Natural Resource Fund Board, which we're going to talk a lot about today. He is none other than Mr. Terrence Campbell. Welcome. You need to unmute for us.
Hi,
Yes.
Hi, Shaneika. Hi, Shurwayne. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a privilege to join with you guys and to share in the discussion.
Yes, it is definitely a privilege for me to have you on this program today. I'm going to take a little attention off of the MP at the moment because I usually like to give our viewers an idea of the persons that we speak to on the show, because many times persons are serving in different capacities and you see them coming up and talking things, but nobody has a real idea of who that person is. Sometimes it helps to make the discussion better. So I want to start out by asking you, Mr. Campbell, you're Guyanese, I do believe, and which part of Guyana did you grow up, and how did that impact where you are today?
So I'm deep Guyana. I was born at Madia, of all places. Though I have no recollection. My parents told me I left Madia at the age of 6 months. And strange enough, I've never been back to Madia. I must make a pilgrimage to Madia and at least kiss the ground. But so my early years were spent in Queenstown, Essequibo. And Shurwayne is a man from the Essequibo coast as well. But I am from the best village on the Essequibo coast. so I grew up in Queenstown until I was about 8 years old. I recall coming to Georgetown, and my father was transferred in about 1972 January. So I was probably about 8 years old when I left the Essequibo coast. But if anybody asks me where I'm from, I don't identify with Georgetown or Republic Park, where I spent a lot of my life. The first
Mhm,
thing to me is Queenstown, Essequibo.
mhm,
I moved to town, Georgetown, when I was about 8. Lived in Kitty for a year, Campbellville for a year, I think, and then spent the rest of my my early years, my teenage years, and even my early adult years in Republic Park
mhm,
before moving to Kingston. So yes, diehard Guyanese, true blood Guyanese.
mhm. Wonderful. All right, so that gives us a little background. I know that you are a businessman. Some people say entrepreneur. You hear lots of things, but in your field, you are considered to be one of the best thereof. Right?
I don't know about the best, and it's wrong. You can't compare. What I'm proud about of my years in business, and there are people who have built businesses that are bigger, some are smaller. But what I'm
Mm-hmm,
proud about of my years in business, I've been in business for since 1987, so getting close to 40 years.
mm-hmm,
On my own, I tell people I became unemployed on the 1st of January 1991. So it's been a long time since I've been quote unemployed. That's when I left employment at hand in hand. But what I'm most proud about is that I've been in business and built my businesses without corruption, without getting engaged in corruption, without any government assistance whatsoever. It's all clean, all self-made, and that's what I'm most proud about. And I it's a reason that I feel I can speak out, and
mm-hmm.
I have spoken out even when the coalition was in power.
Yes.
And it's the reason I feel I can speak out when I see things are not going right or not going wrong. Um, so that's what I'm most proud about, that I built the business without cutting corners, never cutting corners. And
Mm-hmm.
and still I've managed to be successful and to do well.
All right. That is great. That is great. I'll now take us into the discussion today. As my topic said, we'll talk about the government's corruption and the NRF fund. A lot has been happening in that sphere, and it is my belief as well. Some of the distractions we're seeing, because I call what the president does in his early mornings distraction when they don't want you to talk about a particular issue. He goes out and he rants, and then everybody talks about that rather than what's happening. And I believe two of the most important things that have been happening during that period is this talk about the NRF fund, where you would have begun to talk about the issues as a board member sitting there. And I mean, as a parliamentarian for the chairman, they have been dealing with this for a while in parliament, to the point where you had that big drama happening. And some people said the parliamentarians were wrong for handling the mace. Some said they were right, but I'm saying, as we sit here today, this happened in 2021 of December. We're now here in 2024 of December. And with the conversation that is being carried, we now can understand, for those who didn't understand, why it was very important for something to be done during that period. So let's talk about that. Mr. Campbell, you spoke about being on the board. And basically, from my understanding of what you've been saying in the public domain, is that there is no real information coming to the board in regards to the spending, and there have been some flimsy justifications for that, and you've been criticizing the government on that to start with. Let's talk about that before we go to what happened after you criticized them.
Okay, so let me clarify that I am not on the board of the fund.
Okay.
There was prior to
Investment.
the first NRF Act, I think, was enacted in 2019. And
Mm-hmm.
that did not have a board. And then the PPP administration came in and they amended the act and put in place a board. And part of that, they claim that it was better. And we're going to discuss a better structure for the act. We're going to discuss a little bit that. But I'm not on the board. The,
Okay.
the PPP, in their wisdom, when they passed that legislation, they did not cater for an opposition representative on the board. The management of the fund has three organs. It has the board of the apex, and it has two committees. One committee is the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee. That has 9 members, private sector, some religious folks, and so on. And then there's a board at the top, which has 5 members. 3 are appointed by the president. 1 is a nominee of the National Assembly, and with the government in majority, it means that the government is thus able to appoint 4 out of 5. And the 5th is a representative of the private sector. And I will speak frankly to say the private sector has long been politically captured by the PPP. So in essence, the PPP, and I'm gonna, maybe I'll use a phrase as we go through the program. And the phrase that I'll use is familiar to accountants and lawyers. It's form over substance. So when the PPP says that we have a better act and the act has a board and so on, and I quite honestly, I like the fact that there's a board, but that's at the level of form. At the level of substance, it doesn't translate into greater independence. It doesn't translate into greater accountability. It doesn't translate into greater transparency. It does not translate into greater professional input. Nothing, because effectively, through political capture of the private sector, through its majority in parliament, and through the president's direct ability to appoint 3 members of the board, essentially the PPP and the government gets their own way to appoint the entire board. So at the level of form, yes, you have a private sector representative and you have a nominee from the National Assembly, but at the level of substance, it's the government appointing all 5 members. So the government under the act did not cater, they did not want an opposition nominee on that board, and we'll discuss the reasons for that. We know the reasons, but we'll come to them. And they did not want an opposition nominee either on the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee. The only place that they maybe reluctantly decided to have an opposition nominee is on the Investment Committee. So I am the opposition's nominee on the Investment Committee. But as I say to those members on the committee, and as I have hinted at meetings that we've had with the board, I am a member on the investment committee, but I am also a citizen in Guyana with a vested interest in what happens with the funds that we get from the oil sector, what happens with the funds under the governance of the Natural Resource Board. So they have tried to limit me, and you would have seen some criticism from some folks saying, "Oh, that's beyond his remit. He's on the investment committee. He shouldn't be saying, anything about the withdrawals or so on." That's. Let me quote a famous a guy who speaks every Thursday. He has a show every Thursday. That's hogwash. If I'm to quote that guy, it's hogwash that as a member of the investment committee, I should limit my interest into what the mandate of the investment committee and not be concerned with the fund as a whole. I'm a citizen of Guyana and I'm concerned with the fund as a whole. So the issue that I brought up in the public, well, I would say the issue had been in the public domain before. But since my appointment to the fund, and I'd like to highlight something, that as far as I know, the leader of the PNC nominated the opposition leader, nominated me, advanced my name to be the nominee, as his nominee to the investment committee, circa October 2023. It took 9 months
Yeah.
before the government acted on that nomination. So I've only been sitting on the investment committee since July, and I first noticed the act states very clearly that funds are to be used for national development priorities, and now that's nebulous, right? There's no clear definition of what is a national development priority. And it should also be used just for essential projects following a major natural disaster. Sitting on the investment committee, there have been two withdrawals, one in July and one in October, and then there's a third that just took place either earlier this week or late last week. With the first two withdrawals, the instrument that instructing that withdrawal just broadly said national development priorities. I have been a businessman for, like I said, getting close to 40 years, 37 years. And not even a cake shop would document a withdrawal in that fashion. Now, the board has to agree. Parliament, and we've had Mr. Jagdeo try to confuse the nation. Oh, Parliament approves the level of withdrawal. Yes, Parliament sets the withdrawal. And I'm going to deal a little bit with that. Parliament says, yes, they've set limits for the withdrawal. On the first 1 billion, it's 100%, and so on. And I'm gonna touch on that a little bit because I'll show you the greed in this government. So Parliament says this is the amount, sets the amount that can be withdrawn in a particular year. When that and this is no different. Let's go to a company. In a company, the management might set up a budget, right? And they might set up a budget for, let's say, the human resource department. Say, yes, your budget for salary is X. Your budget for team building activity is Y. Your budget for Christmas party is Z. Notwithstanding the fact that the budget has established the gross amount, any responsible human resource manager will document expenditure. Will say, well, okay, I'm spending $1 million for the Christmas party. I'm spending this $500 is for team building event that will take place at ROI Resort. So what I'm asking is, yes, an amount has been set by the parliamentary withdrawal, but when you are requesting that withdrawal, it is important for the board to understand and to approve for the withdrawal instrument to spell out what is going to be spent on. Is it going to be spent on the gas to energy project? Is it going to be spent to buy solar panels? Is it going to be spent on a useless second bridge over the Berbice River at this point? Whatever it's going to be spent on, that should be stated. Instead, that withdrawal instrument just said national development priorities. And to my mind, that is unacceptable. And that is where I started to press internally. I'm not a crazy guy. I'm not going to jump out in the public domain because I want attention. No, I'm too old for that. I pressed internally and I said, this is unacceptable. And I am requesting through my own investment committee chair, I said, go to the board chair and express my concern and my disquiet about the withdrawal instrument, that it's not specific enough for the management of the fund to be certain that it's being spent in accordance with what the legislation requires.
Mm-hmm.
The response I got was that, okay, we're going to take a look at it and we'll probably get some broad wording. I said, that's unacceptable for me. And I will go public and I will take legal action. And that's still on the table. I have had discussions with at least one lawyer who is willing to take action on this matter. But here's what's interesting, Shaneika. So in July, and I'm not saying I'm going to be, the argument might be made that the members of the investment committee do not need to see the withdrawal instrument. However, it was shared in July and it was shared in October again, which is when I started to raise a query. Would you believe it that the entire apparatus of the fund and the government is so hell-bent on doing what they want with this nation, with money that belongs to the citizens of Guyana, that on this occasion, in December, they did not share the withdrawal instrument with the members of the investment committee. In other words, they do not want Terrence Campbell to see that request. That request. So what we've had is a situation that billions of dollars have been withdrawn from the Natural Resource Fund, and there is no, the citizens of this nation, this is not a partisan matter. This is not a PPP supporter matter, a APNU supporter matter, AFC supporter matter. This is not a Region 1 matter or a Region 10 matter. This is a national matter. This is the citizens of this country. They have a right to know, because, you know, when Guyana found oil, everybody was like, oh, the politicians are going to take it and waste the money. We're going to end up like Nigeria. We're going to end up like Venezuela, and so on. And the coalition government, in its wisdom, decided, here, we're going to set up a natural resource fund. Because what citizens don't want to see is that we collect billions and billions of dollars, and then in 10 or 15 years, we're turning around, we're saying, whatever happened to all that money we collected? Where did it go? Right? So billions of dollars have been spent, and the government cannot provide an accounting for exactly where all of that money has gone. This government has been spending that money like drunken sailors. They cannot provide an accounting for where all that money is gone. And I know I've been taking up a lot of time. I'll wrap this up so you can get some questions. And so my senior, the chairman of the party, and the MP could get a word in. But I want to say something. And I want to say something. When the government, and I had an issue with the coalition government and this particular act, because my own personal perspective is that this act, the NRF Act, should be embedded in the Constitution. You know, I just took Mr. Jagdeo before the Ethnic Relations Commission. That's Ethnic Relations Commission is covered by Article 212D. The Consolidated Fund is also covered by the Constitution. My own personal opinion is that the NRF Act should be in the Constitution, because then you can have a debate, you put it in, and it's there, and you only with a supermajority can you change it. And there's why it's important. Because when the coalition government is in power, I advanced this thing. I said, you know, we should try to get it into the Constitution. Because my fear was that if the PPP came to power, that they would change the act immediately. So said, so done. They changed it in 2021. When they changed it in 2021, they said, listen, the first $500 we're going to take out, we're going to use the first 500 million. We're going to use 100%. The next 500 million, we're going to use 75, and so on. And I'm not going to confuse our audience. So of the first 2.5 billion that comes into the fund, they said in their withdrawal limits that they set up, that they were going to be able to use a maximum of 1,275 million. Let's just keep those figures. Of the first 2.5 billion, when they first amended the act, in 2021 and started drawing, I think, around May 2022, the maximum they could take out from the first 2.5 billion was 1,275,000. The drunken sailors, right? These drunken sailors, they got so excited with this money that they came back in 2024 and they made an amendment so that they could draw down more of this money. They said, you know, this basically they said, this money's so sweet, boy, we got to spend more, right? So now, this is the PPP. In 2021, of the first 2.5 billion, we will only take out 1,275,000,000. The same PPP, so drunk on the oil money, by 2024, come back and say, no, of the same first 2.5 billion, we're going to take out 2.4 billion. And Mr. Jagdeo, and to a lesser extent, the president on earlier this week, they want to come out and say they are managing so well. If Mr. Jagdeo says that the act that he put in place in 2021 was so well thought out and addressed and so transparent and so accountable, what kind of an economist is he that he thought that 1275 out of 2.5 billion was okay, and then just 3 years later said, no, I want 2.4 billion. This government is using our oil money to do as a political slush fund. And they do not want anyone to question them on it. And so they come, Mr. Jagdeo comes every single Thursday to try to confuse the citizens and try to confuse the press without addressing the fact that the act says he must account for this money. And one more thing before I finish. The Public Accountability and Oversight Committee is charged with oversight of the fund. How can that committee have effective oversight if it doesn't know exactly how the money is being spent? Mr. Jagdeo, and to a lesser extent, Mr. President Ali on his rant, he was more ranting about. I think that was more about rigging and no confidence voting. So that was not about the NRF. That was pure nonsense. It was quote unquote hogwash. You know,
correct.
You know. So these are some of the important things that I don't think the citizens of this country understand. That the PPP is on a spending binge. The brilliant economist that Jagdeo says he is thought that he would only need 1,275,000,000 out of 2.5 billion, and in just 2 years later, he's so drunk on spending the oil money, he jumps back and says, no, 1,275,000,000 out of 2.5 billion is not enough. I want 2.4 billion of it. It's greed, it's avarice, and they're using it as a political slush fund. And the citizens of Guyana, we must not address this along partisan lines. This is not a PPP or a PNC or an AFC matter. This is your money, and it's your children's money and your children's children's money. It belongs to all of the citizens of Guyana. I'm sorry I took up so much of your time, Shaneika, but I'm fascinated about this issue.
That's okay. We're here to get the facts and ensure that the Guyanese population understands what we're talking about when we say that they're corrupt, what we are talking about when we point out the many issues. You just highlighted some of the things that I had in my notes to point out here, but I want to bring the chairman in on this. Now, as Mr. Campbell just presented, we know that when they changed it, and like you rightfully said, it's like if the money sweetened them, so they came back to Parliament and made that change to almost take all of the money, about 99% of that fund. But I want us to just contrast it before we go forward. And I'll go from the second, when you got the second amount, which it is noted as the second US 1 billion. And we need to remember at this point they're talking about US dollars, that the fund, they should be able to take out of that fiscal year 95% of that money. Whereas in contrast, when the coalition did it, it was only, and the second on that said, it would have been 75%. But they changed it to 95%. And it also went on to say on the third, where they are saying that, well, what they said in the change in December 2029, because of course we're saying the MP will break down how much more they took when they made the change earlier this year. But in December 2029, they said on the third 1 billion that they would take out 90%. In contrast to what the coalition did, it would have been only 50%. Understanding that this fund should be there to save money for the generations to come, to invest money that we will be able to build more money for the future generations. Rather, what you're seeing there is a fund, like Mr. Terrence just said, it's like becoming like a slush fund. They're just taking monies. Chairman, you were in Parliament on this first move in December 29th, I believe it was 2021, when they made that change. And again, in I believe it may have been February of this year, they would have made a change to that legislation. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, Shaneika, you're absolutely right, and I must commend Mr. Terrence Campbell on all that he would have shared in the last half hour. I think he touched widely in so many different areas that we all want to discuss. But let me go back to the beginning of this transition, or this change in terms of the NRF. We were, without any doubt, we knew, we were confident that this is where 2 years, 3 years later, this is where we would have ended up. We were sure when we looked at the changes that the People's Progressive Party were making to that act, we were very confident that they were looking to withdraw most of those funds, and without the kind of oversight that we would have put in place. I heard Mr. Campbell talk about the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee. That is one of the two boards that you have outside of the investment board that he's on. You have the NRF board, then you have the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee. And Mr. Campbell rightfully questioned what exactly was the purpose of that board, what exactly they're doing. If you look at the act that they implemented, that the president assented to, you will see, and you can go and read it. You will see that the act says, in general terms, except in general terms, that the committee shall provide non-governmental oversight of the fund. That is all it says. There is no detail of what exactly of the functions or authority of that committee. Nothing whatsoever. If you go to the act, you will see it there. I'm certain Mr. Campbell would have looked at it. All it does is to say, well, you have oversight. It doesn't give in detail any specifics. And so they knew exactly what they were doing, the kinds of loopholes they would have created to ensure that they can withdraw these funds without any trouble. That is why in December of 2021, we on the opposition side behaved the way that we did, because we thought the citizens of this country and the future generations, their children, their children, the future generation will be threatened by what this act does. We don't have a problem with the institution of the board. I don't believe we had a board before. But what we had was a 22 member
20.
committee. A 22 member committee. Persons came from the media, from the indigenous community, the private sector, you name it. You had 22 pairs of eyes with a specific mandate to, to have oversight over this fund and to regulate the activities of the fund in terms of the withdrawals, etc. And they removed that. They were quick to remove that. And what did they replace it with? You have a 5-man board, and I think I wrote about this in 2022. You have a 5-man board chosen by the government, and then you have this nine person, let me don't say man, but person committee. Almost 100% of them, you can see the alignment with the government. Almost 100%, even in the areas where they chose persons from, for example, from the religious community.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the connection. Who you wanted a Muslim, you choose a Muslim that is connected to the People's Progressive Party. From the church, you brought somebody who was critical of the coalition and has ties, and you put him there. You want somebody from the Hindu committee, you brought the second Vindis, that person from that Dharmic Sabha, who is the second, I believe, the second in charge there. The facts are there. From the private sector, you see who the persons are. So they basically installed a yes man board so that there is no accountability, there is no oversight, and importantly, there is no inclusivity. At this age and time, and with the wealth that we now have, you would think that we would have been ready to operate as a modern society where inclusionary government would be the order of the day. I sat on the committee of appointments when they were appointing members to the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee and the other board. And we in the opposition, we suggested Vincent Adams and Elson Lowe, who have, the two of them have, look, Vincent has 40 years experience in oil and gas. Elson, an economist, worked at a very prestigious organization in the US, Goldman Sachs, I believe. And so we thought that these two persons were fit and proper. Gail Teixeira did everything possible to ensure that these two individuals, although they were the most qualified from the bunch, and this is one coming from the parliament, not from the opposition, mind you. Let me just make it very clear for our viewers.
Mm-hmm.
One nominee from the parliament to say that, oh, parliament has involvement. Now, they use their majority, their one-seat majority, and Gail Teixeira started to cherry pick from what the act says, and she suggested in that committee that the act is pointing to someone who has legal and or financial background, thereby disqualifying someone that has a wealth of knowledge and experience in the form of Vincent Adams. I said, okay. I made a nomination at the moment. At the moment when she said that, I said, okay, you're disqualifying them. I would like to nominate Christopher Ram. Now, mind you, like Mr. Terrence Campbell, Christopher Ram was a critic of the coalition government. But that didn't stop us from nominating him because we believed at our core that you need a voice there. You need someone that is competent, that is capable, and not a yes man who will pinpoint
Mm-hmm.
the wrongdoings wherever they may occur, safeguard the interests of the Guyanese people. So we did not deal with this thing in a partisan manner. We did not look at it from to benefit our party or from a political angle. We looked at it broadly as in the best interests of all Guyanese. And so we nominated Christopher Ram, who qualified in law, who's qualified in law, who is a chartered accountant, and who has been an activist for transparency and accountability over the last 30 years. They
Mhm.
rejected him and they placed Dunstan Barrow, who I deem a yes man now for the PPP. So what is happening there with Mr. Campbell, where he's not seeing and they now are not presenting anything to that investment committee? It is not by accident. It is not something strange of the People's Progressive Party.
Mhm.
This is what they do all the time. You would recall at the last, not this press conference yesterday, the one prior, Mr. Jagnio said opposition, we're obstructionists and all sorts of things. He described us for not, in his justification, for not placing any opposition on any of the boards. While we
Mhm.
were in government, we ensured that
Mhm.
an opposition member was there. And with respect to the NRF, we thought again that in the best interest of the people of Guyana, that somebody from the opposition had to be there. The persons from
Mhm.
the unions had to be there. You know what they did? They watered down it. They determined which union the rep would come from. They choose, and guess who they choose? It's no surprise. GAU. GAU, one from GAU and one from the breakaway union. I think it is GPSU. It's a breakaway union rather than get the big union that covers a lot of these unions and allow them to choose their rep. They choose GAU. So it is no, I believe GAU, there's a parliamentarian. The PPP has a written rule that somebody comes from GAU every parliament that sits in a PPP seat. They have that kind of arrangement. So I'm saying in a nutshell that this was all cooked up and it is no surprise. And so, at some point, the people of Guyana will have to have their say, their final say on this.
Mhm.
It is unacceptable, and I heard the president and Mr. Campbell refer to it. The law is very clear on what you must use this oil money for. Although it states broadly, well, if you have natural disaster or when you have projects of national importance, um, priorities. But it would suggest that when you come for that money, that would suggest that you don't just write national project of national importance. You must say what are these projects, even broadly. You say 100 million for the Demerara Harbor Bridge. You say another 50 billion for some road, whether it's Heroes Highway or wherever. We need to say that the president in his rant was saying the other morning that, oh, there is parliamentary oversight. There is practically none, because you place the oil money as budgetary support. You lump it into everything else. And when we ask, I wanted to point this out, we have been asking in Parliament, where exactly amongst these numbers, amongst these figures and all these projects and all this spending, where exactly is the oil money being spent? Point us in the direction. We've never gotten a serious and proper answer from this
Mhm.
government. And that worries me, and it should worry every citizen, whether you support the People's Progressive Party or you support the PNC, APNU, AFC, whichever, or even if you don't support any party, it is your money, it is our money, and the government of the day has to be held accountable. We have to make them account for it.
I want to bring in a statement that I believe was in the letter that you wrote, Mr. Campbell, to the Stabrook News. I believe that letter was carried in, and it caused the person who does the Thursday presser, or whatever they call that, to decide that he was going to now launch a personal attack on you after that. And I will read this because they would have used some of their people as well to attack you and try to spin what was said in this letter in a particular manner. But I want to read it for our viewing audience and allow you to, talk to this. I'm quoting what is said there. It says the VP has a genetic predisposition to eating his cake and having it. As a former president, he was the champion of the earth. Today, he's the champion of fossil fuels. As opposition leader, he was the champion of renegotiation. Today, he's the champion of contract sanctity. Unfortunately for the VP, I sit as the opposition representative of the investment committee of the NRF, and I am not prepared to let him tout the transparency of the act and simultaneously claim that Blancanesa, let me get this word right.
Balkanization.
Blancanization makes tracing the funds difficult. That was the statement, and it caused him to go on a rampage one of those Thursdays. And then they have been spreading all sorts of things on social media, calling for persons to boycott your business, etc. Let's talk about this.
So let me say first of all, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to speak to this. That I have been around for too long, a businessman for way too long, to even lose sleep for 1 second in the night when they call for boycotts. I think because the last election, it's no secret, and he has addressed this. He's brought out, I said that I didn't want the PPP to go back. And that was the reason I was involved in the early days of the formation of ANUG. I make absolutely no apologies for that, because I did not want the PPP to go back, because what I saw would happen is the same corruption that has manifested itself. Absolutely no apologies. Mr. Jagdeo can take what I said and spin it however he wants, because the reason I did not want the PPP to go back is the corruption, I'm repeating it, the corruption that I expected that has now manifested itself. So no apologies for that. Second, I made a statement about Mr. Jagdeo because I've been observing him over many years. And I feel he has this penchant for flip-flopping, right? For saying one thing now and something else later. When there was I recall that when the Vice News came and we heard about an important national character, which most Guyanese did not know, Mr. Sue. When Vice News came, I believe it was in that program that Mr. Jagdeo spoke about owning a house in the United States. I never knew that Mr. Jagdeo had property in the United States. Recently, and I don't think I'm wrong again, and apologies if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure that I heard Mr. Jagdeo said when relating to the currency, that people are selling their houses and investing in the United States, right? Apologies if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that I heard these things. And it came to me when I matched these two facts, that how did Mr. Jagdeo get the money to buy the house in the United States if he himself didn't at some point send some money outside to buy this house, right? Even if he took a mortgage in the United States, and I don't see how he can take a mortgage in the United States because he doesn't have, as far as I know, he doesn't file U.S. taxes. But even if he did, he would have had to send out the deposit or something. And I thought to myself, how could this guy, and again, forgive me if I'm wrong, but how could this guy at one point criticize something that he himself must have done? And it just seems to me that over the years, there's this pattern of Jagdeo says this, and when it's convenient, he changes, and this becomes his position. Jagdeo to me is a flip-flopper. I think that's deep inside of him. It has nothing. I'm not saying anything for his parents, right? You could have two honest parents and the child is a thief, right? So I was speaking about Mr. Jagdeo himself.
Mm-hmm.
When folks said Mr. Jagdeo says you're racist, and I am a person who, amongst my friends, they can't even use a derogatory term for any of the ethnicities that occupy Guyana. But let me take Mr. Jagdeo to school. There is one single race in this world. It's the human race. Because our DNA that we share with each other, we share 99% of DNA with each other. So true scholars don't say you're this race or you're that race. It's one human race. We have different ethnicities. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And when you speak of the term race, Mr. Jagdeo might be right here when he uses the term race. When one speaks about the term race, one speaks to scholars, and I'm sure Mr. Jagdeo considers himself one. You are talking about a belief of superiority of one group over another. And usually that's the larger group, the group with more resources and so on, that would tend to exercise superiority over another. Now, it's not the first time. I've been following Mr. Jagdeo for years. It is not the first time that this guy goes into his bag, but he's not a magician, because everybody knows when he puts his hand in that bag, what card is coming out? The race card.
Mm-hmm.
Over and over again. Over and over again. Coming on to the last election, when before 2015, he went into his bag, right? Every time he goes, Mr. Jagdeo, even before on that press conference, when he made this phenomenal leap, and the guy is not athletic. I want to know how he jumped from my attack on him all the way to say that I am saying Indo-Guyanese. This is
Mm-hmm.
a guy, and I'm being a little facetious here, but we have to have a little jokes. This is a guy who walks with his two hands moving simultaneously like this. They don't, he has a funny way. He is no athlete, but he jumped. This man jumped all the way from my speaking about him to say, I am saying this about East Indians. Mr. Jagdeo has a reason for this. Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Jagdeo probably says, hey, this boy Campbell getting a little political, and I'm going to cut him off at his feet. I know that Campbell has worked, and he knows a lot about me, because he could talk why I said this, why I said then, and why I do this, and so on. This boy Campbell, right? If he think he can get political, if he think he can help the opposition or something coming up, he can come in as a fresh face. I'm going to paint him
Mm-hmm.
early on, because Mr. Campbell has a lot of Indian friends. Mr. Campbell been working and living closely and professionally. I have a business. I own a business that I started. Me and 4 Indo-Guyanese friends, one now of blessed memory, that continues to this day. So
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Campbell, we have to cut him off, because we have to paint him. We got to start getting people to see him as a racist. And I expect that he will continue with that. But it's not going to stick,
Mm-hmm.
because the people who know me, right? The people who know me are laughing. We joke. They send me messages. I say, oh, Jack, they're saying about you. I say, hey, you texting your racist friend? And we laugh at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Jagdeo made a phenomenal leap to try and paint me for political reasons, to use that race card, which is the only card that he has in his arsenal. I would venture to say that without that card, Mr. Jagdeo would never have been either president or vice president.
That
It
is
is
true.
that card that he depends on over and over again. And I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to join with Mr. Jagdeo. I'm not concerned with race as he uses it.
Mm-hmm.
Because first of all, we're all one race. I'm not going to spend my time on ethnicity. I am going to speak to national issues. The one that the opposition leader has charged me to speak on is the natural resource fund. And we need to bring the discussion. We need to
Mm-hmm.
bring the discussion back to how we are going to satisfy the requirements of the act that Jagdeo put in place in 2021. I have no time with his racism. Every
Mhm.
time, and I ask every Guyanese and every member of the press who might listen to this, every time that Jagdeo bring the race card and say Campbell is a racist and this is what he thinks, say Campbell is not interested in that. And the citizens of this country are not interested in that.
Correct.
Let's talk
Correct.
about the money y'all spending out. Let's talk of the
Mhm.
money that y'all are devouring. Let's talk about how we account for it, right? That is what
Mhm.
is important. And I have no time with Jagdeo and his accusations of racism. And I have no time with anybody who called a boycott on me. I've been around too long. And unlike Jagdeo, I wasn't devouring all the money that I made over the years. I put it up, which is what I want Guyana to do with the fund, so that anybody who call him a boycott on
Mhm.
me, wasting the time. It's too late. I've gone too clear far. To use the common parlance, I gone clear. So
Mhm.
let's forget about the boycott. That ain't gonna hurt me. And let's forget about the accusations, the racism. I don't care about that. The people who know me know that I'm not a racist. And let's bring the discussion back to the Natural Resource Fund. And they're squandering his word of the money in the Natural Resource Fund.
Beautifully put, beautifully put. And you're absolutely right. It is a card that he uses every time he feels attacked, every time he feels that his story is not adding up. He pulls that card out with the bunch of lies that he usually tells with it. So I agree with you 100% on that. We have approximately 2 minutes remaining, and I want to give the opportunity for you to, um, both you and yourself and the MP, to make a last call to persons viewing this program, even if it is something else that you want to say that you believe Guyanese must hear right now as we move forward and we continue to hold this government accountable, call them out on the issues. I'll allow MP um, Holder to give his closing remarks, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Campbell. I believe you're muted, Chairman.
Yes, thanks, Shanika. All I would say at this point is that the citizens of this country has got to become conscious, more conscious of the highway robbery that is happening under this government. They've got to focus. In a couple of months, we will have, or they will have rather, an opportunity to make the necessary changes and to put us on a path of true prosperity. I trust that they will continue to follow what we are saying in the opposition, follow us in terms of our agitation against this corrupt and wicked party that is in government that seems hell bent on destroying the future, the present, and the future of this country. We have a golden opportunity. Let's not squander it. Let's not continue to squander it. The time for action is now, and it's quickly approaching that time where we can make those necessary changes. And I trust that good sense will prevail.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. You're muted as well. You need to unmute.
Yeah, sorry. To follow up on Shurwayne's point, the money in the National Resource Fund belongs to all citizens.
Mhm.
Mr. Jagdeo and Mr. and President Ali have advanced that, we need roads, we need this and that. There are a couple of things, and I know I just got a few seconds to go. There's the issue when you're going to spend money, you also have to have absorptive capacity. I'll give you an example, a personal example, so that people can relate. Maybe about 4 years ago or 3 years ago, I got a loan for 200 million from the Amara Bank. I don't think I've used up 70 million up to now because I'm spending it as my ability to construct in a good way, right? In a long lasting way. What we have seen is them drawing down the money and spending it left, right, and center. And so many times, I mean, we can enumerate so many examples of projects being done, roads being done, the Grove Road, the Thomas Lands Road, being done since they came into power, and it has to be done again. We've seen poles falling. All of this, it's your money wasting. Right. So they're going to make a case that they want to spend on infrastructure. And that is true that we do have some infrastructure spend. But I think there's so much corruption in that infrastructure spend, and so much of it is not being spent efficiently. That needs to be addressed. Secondly, you can't spend all of your money. They knew this. And so this is why when they first changed the act, they said out of the first 2.5 billion, we're going to spend 1,275 million. But the money and the corruption and the greed got to their head, and they come back and say, no, we're going to spend 2.4 billion. I want to end on this point. This is not a government who cares for its citizens. This is a government who cares for its families and for their own family and their friends. This is why they jumped from in 2021 and early 2022 from saying, hey, of the first 2.4 billion, we're going to spend 1,275 million, and jump to say, boy, of that first 2.5 billion, we're going to have a party. We're going to spend 2.4 billion. That cannot be a government that cares for its citizens. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the program. Season's greetings to you. Season's greetings to all of the APNU AFC, all of the people listening, and season's greetings to all of Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a privilege having you here, and I hope it will not be the last, because we only got to touch on a very small portion of things that are happening here. So I'll definitely be contacting you again so we can continue this conversation. Thank you as well, Chairman, for always, coming through when needed. I want to thank our viewers, of course, for joining us today. Again, as I always say, we have to continue to hold this government accountable. And when that time comes, when the next regional and general election is called, it is in our hands, it is in our power to ensure that this country gets a government who will treat the people, its citizens, with respect, with care, and ensure that our future generations are taken care of. Thank you so much for joining. We're about to head into the holidays. I would not see you until after the holidays. So I want to tell all of my viewers here today, I do hope you enjoy the Christmas season. Don't forget the reason for the season. And enjoy. I hope you spend it with your family and your friends and your loved ones. And, conserve, do what you must, and let's take up this fight as we go through. Thank you so much, and do have a wonderful afternoon.